divestment BDS, they have no idea. So in that process, there was a lot of questions. What does divestment mean? What does that mean to remove our funds from these companies? What are these companies? So on and so forth. So I'm going to kind of skipping around a little bit. Another thing that we did was not only did we make a push for divestment, but we proposed an investment screen. I think it's really important to think about as you go forward with your campaigns, because you can have your school divest, but schools invest money. Money moves around all the time. And if they divest, they can say, yeah, we divested, and then next year, in the next financial quarter even, they might reinvest in another company. So unless you try and make these things sustainable and you make them last, it really might just be a token gesture by the school to get you off their back, and then they can reinvest 2 months later and you're not even going to know. You know, you have to go and get the information about their investments. They're not going to hand you that. So unless you try and make it something that's going to last, you know, who knows what's going to happen. And another note on the investment screen, something that Hampshire had, again, that's unique, and I don't know if your schools have it, but it's something to really take note of, is that we had this thing called Choir, which actually came out of the South Africa divestment movement in the 70s, which was a committee for Hampshire on responsible investment, by and large. And there was a student representative on that. And in turn, I think, just a little side note, one thing that SJP did really well was we got people into every single position on campus. The person on the Board of Trustees was a member of SJP. The alternate to the Board of Trustees was a member of SJP. The representative on Choir was a member of SJP. The representative on the Finance Committee was a member of SJP. People in SJP had been on the committee in the school for student government. They've been on the committee in the school for finances for student groups. So I think you're going to find a lot of opposition in the administration and in your student body. So it's really important that you become a part of those groups, or at least become acquainted with their methods, how they function, and who the people are that are on these committees. Okay? Like if your student government is completely opposed to divestment, you need to think about whether you even want to go through them or whether you need to become a part of them and take over their message. So as you can see down here, this is modeled off the American Friends Service Committee. And another thing I want to stress, which people have said, is you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time about what companies to divest from or what screens to create. They exist, okay? And you know, you'll hear more about that, but I think that's important. So as I mentioned before, there was an institutional statement that was created. And this was really important because what Hampshire did in our divestment was not just about divestment. As you can see up here, we wanted the school to make a statement. And it's something that Kanye mentioned last night, and it's something that was hard because it was lost in the whole movement for divestment, is that because the administration cut us out so much and there was so much butting of heads, a lot of this stuff got lost in the movement. And I think that's something that SJP is still working on. As you can see, these are some of the things. We're not going to read them all, but it's important to not just ask for divestment, but include in that your institution needs to make a statement. And I think there's no telling if they're going to or not, but make that part of it, you know? Because once schools start saying, we as an organization coming from the administration oppose the occupation, so on and so forth, that's when other schools' administrations will start to take notice in a way that let's be proactive and join this. Right? You know, it's going to snowball over time. Like I said before, students were really confused. What do you mean by divestment? What is this? What's going on? What does that mean? How are you selecting these companies? So again, be upfront, have all this information. These are, again, just some of the things that we chose. You don't need to focus on them. I just wanted to show you how what everyone's talking about went to words in what we did at Hampshire. So I want to, just getting back to the nitty-gritty, I think what SJP did was we went and we asked for the school's investments, and you can do this in some cases. In some cases, you can't. I actually went to a school last year where the school's investments are run by a private company outside of the school, which then donates the money to the school. So, like I said, you need to know how your school operates. Okay, so some of these schools have these things already made up, and actually, that school, which was Ole Miss, this came out of South African divestment movement, and the school saying, look, we need to make safeguards so that students can't just access our funds, they can't make these quick movements to get them taken over or adjust them. So your first step is to know what your school is invested in. A lot of you may have already gotten there, but at the same time you need to know the structure of investment. So we got these funds, we did a lot of research, and we came up with these companies. And there, as you can see there, I'm sure, I would almost guarantee that every single one of the schools here is invested in these companies and probably more. You can go on to Who Profits and find all this information, but this is what we at Hampshire focused on. And it's really easy to say what's wrong with these companies. There's no question. But I think that, again, when you're talking about divestment on your campuses, you need to make that very clear. And I don't think necessarily that's something that people wouldn't do, but again, have all your information up front and have it ready. So I want to talk about this, the bureaucratic structure, because like I've mentioned, it's super important to know your school structure. And at Hampshire, although there was a really dense bureaucracy, we were able to access it, which might not be the case at other schools. But like I said before, this is the structure. So we had representatives on all of these committees. I think maybe the investment committee is the only committee that the student representative is not on, which is pretty indicative of the whole issue. And actually choir, which like Connie mentioned last night, before SJP brought the school's investments to the table, choir hadn't even met since 1994. Okay? So we were lucky enough to have one, even though it wasn't even operating. And you know, they made claims like in 2000, if you look on the school's website, they have this great little thing that says the school has divested from, or we have no investments in Burma or Darfur. And that's a complete fallacy because last year when we got the school to divest, they made a statement to say, oh, now we've divested from from Burma and Darfur, and it's not just about Palestine. Which obviously for SJP is a great success to the extent that they got their money out of a lot of places that are doing terrible things. But the point is that obviously their investment stream was a completely bankrupt institution in the first place. So this is how Hampshire's structure works. The Board of Trustees, as it is in most schools, is the most important institution, is the one that really controls everything. So you need to find out when they meet. You need to find out where they meet, and you need to make a ruckus there. That's a really important thing, because it's not just about, like I said, it's not just about talking to the students, which is really important, but I think one thing that SJP did really well is we had that front, this kind of a two-pronged movement, if you will, is that we did the grassroots organizing, and we also attacked the institution at the same time. Okay? And in turn, the students on this campus knew about SJP, and so did the school. I mean, our president actually spoke at the J Street conference recently just about SJP and what happened here as a kind of opposition to divestment. I have the speech of it on my computer if anyone wants that as well. I was hoping to show some, but so that's a really important component of this whole thing, and I think, like I said, we'll come back to the structure. But I want to talk a little bit about this timeline and kind of go through it because it's important. So what SJP did is after they got the investments and got a lot of signatures is that we made a presentation to choir. Got in touch with them, sat down with them, and made a presentation, which who knows if you're going to be able to do that at your school. And this is a thing you need to think about in terms of tactics. Like if you're really attacking the administration and attacking the Board of Trustees, for example, they're not going to be quite as ready to say, oh yeah, why don't you come to a meeting, okay? So that's an important thing to think about, is before you protest them and assault them, think about how you can try and work with them too. I mean, it's all, like I said, locally specific, but that's an important thing to think about is the order of operations and how you attack them. So presentation was made to choir, and I had that presentation as well if anyone was interested in that, but it was really founded on everything that people have said before me, is that setting up that this is an occupation. Like people in choir and the Board of Trustees